So we're going to talk about managing early season insects and mites with a biological focus. So I've been doing this for a long time. I was interested listening to Scott Barnhart talk about how long he's been in tunnels. Before I went down the extension road, I ran a garden center landscape business in Westminster, Maryland. We called high tunnels cold frames at that point, and aphids were always our first pest. As soon as you get to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, the green peach aphid is active. If you've left a single weed in there from last season, even if the thing is scraggly and it doesn't look like anything, that is your hot spot. And I have seen it happen over and over again. I periodically do it to myself, where I will leave a weed in there as we're cleaning things up, and that is almost always the hot spot that causes my next problem. So the beginning of all this is to be absolutely as careful as you can be in sanitation. That weed all the way in the back under the bench that you really don't want to crawl under there and get, well, go get that weed. You need to get it out of there. Very likely it is covered with very slow-moving aphids, and they're going to blow up on you. As soon as you start production, they're going to blow up on you. So some things come out really early. You have a question?
Yeah, while you're on that subject, is there a way to treat those, like the stubble? Sometimes you can't get the roots and everything out.
So the question is there a way to treat that stubble? When the house is out of production, you can use herbicides in there, okay? There's a difference between when it's in production and when it's out of production. So when it's out of production, you can use herbicides in there, but a lot of times it is crawling around and digging and just pulling stuff out. I mean, there's no good way to do this. I like when a house is completely out of production. You have nothing growing in there that comes under any kind of a registration. You're not going to be doing any production. You're not going to be selling any vegetables, is to use a wick applicator, glyphosate on a wick applicator. Okay, there are lots and lots of designs for it, but the easiest thing to do is you pour a little bit of concentrated glyphosate into a glass jar, you put a paintbrush in that jar, and you crawl around and you dab your weeds with that paintbrush. Much better than spraying, very, very effective. You get a really high dose on it, goes down to the roots, it will kill that plant absolutely dead out. Now, you can't do that when you have actively growing plants in there. You need to have a license for what you're using, but an out of production house is a very, very different place, okay? So you need to isolate which is which at that point. Oh, so this is what you're seeing on each of these screens. This is the way cucumbers look around the time that you're getting ready to decide to rip them all out and start all over again. This is about the middle of July or so. Once they hit the purlins, you are now scheduled for when it's going to be done. So you probably have been picking for a couple weeks. You're deciding whether you're going to pick for 2 or 3 more weeks at that point. I guarantee you have probably already dealt with. You're going to be looking at powdery mildew at this point. You've probably looked at aphids already, at least several times, western flower thrips. If it's been really dry, you've probably got spider mites already happening. We're going to be talking about staying ahead of all of these things. I really believe in a proactive approach, and one of the beauties, I mentioned this in the last talk, is I have made all kinds of mistakes getting there, and so some things work a lot better than others. So this is the green peach aphid. These are a couple different pictures of it. You can see they colonize really, really quickly. And I mentioned they often survive on weeds in the tunnel. It's just not unusual to have them visit you almost as soon as you plant. And so you got to be ready for these guys. It's the most interesting thing, having done this for a long time now, is I often hear guys complain that they have to spray as soon as they put their plants out, or that they have to start their biocontrol program as soon as they put their plants out. Since the green peach aphid likes it a little cooler than our peppers like it, you shouldn't even be thinking about putting tomatoes, peppers, or cucumbers out at a temperature as low as 50 degrees. You want to be a little warmer than that, so you just have to assume that green peach aphids are going to be active at that point. If you brought your plants in from somebody else, assume that they are loaded with pests as they come in the door. And so again, you need to have an active program on how you're going to deal with these things from the very beginning. You don't want to let them get out of hand. Western flower thrips. So this last season, which was the last season that I did research at the Penn State Southeast Research Farm, I had a high tunnel full of cucumbers and a high tunnel full of tomatoes. and about the time the tomatoes were about 15 inches tall and the cukes were starting to vine a little bit, we had western flower thrips already in there. They came in really fast, and so it was early enough in the season, there was no fruit at that point, that we had the opportunity to try a couple different things, and I'm going to share with you some of what I thought worked really well this last year. Broad mites. How many of you have dealt with broad mites at this point? Few of you have. I got to tell you, for those folks that have put their hands up, you other farmers ought to talk to these people, because broad mites are an insidious pest that it's almost impossible to scout for them. They show up by the time you see peppers that look like what you see on this screen. You had them 5 or 6 weeks ago. You completely missed them. They are out of hand. The plants get all twisted. They can be as bad as it looks like here, but even if the plants just are showing a little bit of twisting, you can see this. I call it alligator skin on the fruit. You can get this alligatoring of your fruit. They are obviously completely unsaleable at that point. The only way to go back to saleable fruit on your peppers at this stage is to pick everything off and start over again and make sure that you're doing a broad mite program. They are about 1/3 the size of a spider mite, and they like to live in flowers and in growing points. So they're just, I can't scout for them. I've tried a bunch of times. Suzanne, the bug lady, was here on Monday in the biocontrol thing, and she was talking about scouting for them. And I'm going, how do you search plants with a 30 power hand lens and effectively do it and have a pest that lives inside the growing points? So I always assume now, we've had them in the area for a while, I just assume that broad mites are part of the landscape. I just assume that we've got them from the beginning of the season, so I need to deal with them. Since we've started treating them that way, as if that is something that we automatically have, I don't have problems with broad mites anymore. We just start treating for them right away, and you can get rid of them. They're not hard to treat for, but you've got to be way out front of them. If you get them to the point that you're looking at this, you have totally lost the battle. And if you go, and you should all read about broad mites. They are worthwhile to learn about because they are really tough to manage. They get on literally every vegetable crop. I have yet to see the crop that they didn't get on. They don't do as ugly a damage on the tomatoes, but they still make them unsaleable. I don't have a good picture of what a tomato looks like because we saw it first on peppers, and ever since then I've just been treating all my indoor crops. They have a really interesting life cycle. So the broad mite male finds a juvenile female that's about 2 days away from her final molt before she becomes mature, glues her to him, finds an insect leg, a bee, an aphid that's getting ready to move, and he has a new colony that he takes off with. He's got his entire mating colony right there attached to him. She molts, they're starting to breed on you. So, trying to stop them without being ahead of them is very difficult. Many of the biocontrol agents, not just pesticide sprays, but also the typical biopredators, are very effective on broad mites. You want to look for and make sure you're using some that are, and there's a lot of good information on doing that. So this is our list of materials here, insects. So we've got soaps and oils. I am still a really strong advocate of using insecticidal soap indoors. It's a really good tool. The one that's most commonly available is from Gowan. It's their M-PEDE product. At 4%, it is aphids, whiteflies, western flower thrips, spider mites, and broad mites. Very, very effective. It's got a 12-hour REI because soap can get in your eyes and irritate, but 0 PHI, but you can spot spray with it. Remember, with a soap, coverage is everything. I am not a huge fan of oils because they are often phytotoxic. It's not unusual to see a burn with an oil, and so I try and be really careful about not using them. I put pyrethrum on here. It's an organic product, and this is largely a biotalk. I stay away from pyrethrum, and typical pyganic is the one that you're going to find out there. I do not use it at all, and the reason for that is it crashes my biocontrol agent program. If you put pyrethrum in there, it's going to wipe out all the good guys. So going back to talking about a little bit about what Dave has doing. Dave mentioned he does not screen his cucumber tunnel. I do screen my cucumber tunnel. So as soon as we put cukes in there, and we can roll the sides up in the end of May, beginning of June, we put window screening on the outside. We go to Lowe's or Home Depot, buy a 100-foot long roll of 6-foot window screening, clip it into the wiggle wire track, seal it on the bottom. Whatever intakes we have, we do the same thing, and train the crew to close the door all the time. Okay, that's a real important one. You can screen the house, but if your crew keeps leaving the door open, that is the easiest way to ruin this program. If you screen a cucumber house like that, you keep out cucumber beetles. If you keep out cucumber beetles, you don't have to spray pyrethroids. If you don't have to spray pyrethroids, generally your aphid predators are going to be a lot more active, and you are going to have a natural population of bugs that are eating other bugs. As soon as you have to spray pyrethrum or any of the pyrethroids, you're going to knock your beneficial population out. And we discovered this in 2014, where we had cucumbers. It was the first year I had grown cucumbers indoors, and I have cucumber beetles showing up in the tunnel. Not unexpected, we know they're coming. So I sprayed with Hero, which is a 2-tank mix of pyrethroids. Does a great job, kills all my cucumber beetles. 2 days later, the aphids flare. I killed all the aphid predators. So a couple days later, the cucumber beetles are back. So I'm spraying with Hero again. A couple days later, I killed off all the aphid predators again. My aphids are flaring again. You get on this ridiculous treadmill, and so the easy way off of the treadmill is especially for a crop like cucumbers that you don't need pollinators in there. We grow parthenocarpic cucumbers, and so you screen the house, keeps the pollinators out, keeps the cucumber beetles out. So the only thing that can get in are small insects that can get through window screening. That really changes the dynamics, but it's much easier to maintain a natural population of good guys if you don't have to spray pyrethroids. The same holds true for spinosad. That would be Conserve and Trust, used to be Spintor, and I'll add Radiant onto that list because it is the same mode of action. They are very broad killers. They kill a lot of stuff, and so when you spray with spinosad, you're killing an awful lot of beneficials off. I don't consider them they are an organic program, but they are not a good part of a biological program because they interrupt the life cycle of so many of the guys that you want working. There's Bavaria bassianis, there's Mycotrol, Botanigard, there's a bunch of them out there. I also don't like this one, although it is a bio product and it's very effective on an awful lot of insects. It also kills the good guys, and it kills bees too. So I don't consider it, I'm looking for more selective materials, things that do what I want it to do. Met 52 is the beginning of that material. So this is a Metarhizium fungus. It's a little harder to find now than it was a couple years ago, but I was at the Michigan show, and Plant Products, and I think they're out of the West, they are still marketing Met 52. It's a fungus. You need to spray it on the end of the day. You need to keep, the wetter it stays longer, the better an infection rate. But it is in the beginning of a selective material. Very, very effective, but you have to get good infection for that product to work. It's known as the green muscardine fungus. It gets inside in the insect. When it bursts open, all these green spores come out. It's a really beautiful look when it actually kills something. And the problem is it doesn't reinfect, but Met 52 is a really interesting product to use. And I like it because it is very broad spectrum, but as long as you're not spraying bees with it, you don't have a problem with it. So now I'm always, look, I know these are somewhat generic talks that I'm doing. So Grandivo, and this is a water dispersible granule. This is one of my products, so I know a lot about it, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time on it. I have been spraying Grandivo in other formulations, even when I was doing research for Penn State. It was the first of the biopesticides that I was using. Really neat, broad, western flower thrips, aphids, spider mites, most of the small sucking insects, but it is a suppressant. It doesn't wipe out the population. And the reason I'm saying that is I'm getting to a story, because stories are how I think about everything. So really effective, and I think a good part of a bio program. Venerate is a different material. These are bacteria. This is the spent extract from bacteria. And bacteria are little powerhouses of making chemicals. That's why we use them for so many things. And so these bacteria churn out pesticides for us. They're obviously specific strains. Venerate is another one. Between the two, we've got this really potent mix of things that kill insects and mites without being very hard on our other biocontrols and bees. So this past season, I was spraying Grandivo for my western flower thrips and getting decent suppressant activity, but not where I wanted. So I came in with Venerate and I sprayed it. I was not working for Marone at this point. I've only been with Marone since November. I was doing this as just part of a fertilizer trial. So I sprayed Venerate. It also suppressed. I did not like the level of control. So I went to the next step and added a neem oil extract into it. I was using Molt-X, which is from BioWorks. This is leading me down the path where I'm starting to figure out tank mixes that actually do what I want it to do. But I was disappointed in the control, and I discovered one of the things that everybody needs to know about their neem oil products is that they have a 1-year shelf life. Neem oil extracts, all of the azadirachtin products. There is Azagard, Azadirect, Azatin, Azera, Molt-X. Those are the ones that come to mind. These are all azadirachtin products. They have a 1-year shelf life. And so I was using Molt-X from 2014. I was not impressed with the control once somebody pointed this out, and so I was doing tank mixes of Azadirect with Grandivo WDG and also with Venerate. So 1 week it was Grandivo plus Azadirect. 5 to 7 days later, Venerate with Azadirect. I wiped out all my small sucking insects and never saw broad mite number 1 except for aphids. The darn aphids, man, they are so tough. So it kept the aphids in check, but periodically I'd see like a hot spot. All of a sudden, you just have, I think of as aphid colonies. You'd see 3 or 4 leaves just break out. And so if you were organic, that would be a great time to use MP'd insecticidal soap, but there's other insecticidal soaps out there. You want to use them at 4% to be effective, get a good soak on them. That'll knock them back. I don't grow organically, so I was using Fulfill. And I like Fulfill a lot in this role. There's 2 specific aphicides out there, Fulfill and Beleaf, B-E-L-E-A-F. They have very similar modes of action. I think one's a 23A and the other is a 23B, but they're very similar. What I like about both of them is they are specific aphicides. It's the only thing they kill. They take an aphid with those 2 little stylets that they feed with, and they cause it to withdraw permanently, and the aphids die of drying out. If that's not a pretty picture. You know, it's almost as pretty as watching a minute pirate bug suck the juice out of an aphid and then kick it off and go get another one. And so they just simply die. It takes them 2 or 3 days, but they die. So their basic program is this Grandivo alternated with Venerate, tank mixed with one of the azadirachtin products, and then you just watch for hot spots all the time. And if you're watching for hot spots, you can stay clean all the time. There are, of course, beneficials and predators. There's no fly. I have no experience with this product. I just keep seeing it out there. This is an Azaria fumarosa product. If you're looking at worm problems, the BTs are really super effective on worms. Dipel, Thuricide. I keep sucking ice in at the same time. Dipel and Thuricide. So if you're looking at any worm problems, very, very effective. Just remember, they only work on really young caterpillars. So if you get what we often see, which is tomato hornworms in our tomato house, and you typically don't see them until they are leaving a frash trail behind. You'll start seeing missing tomatoes or bites out of tomatoes, and you follow the frash trail through the foliage, and you find one that's 3 or 4 or 5 inches long. Do not bother spraying that with BT. All you're doing is washing the worm at that point. You got to get them when they're young, okay? And so what you're really watching for is the moth, and we typically miss them. So for very small caterpillars, Dipel, Thuricide, all these BTs are effective. Just do not bother spraying an old hornworm. Most of the time when you see hornworms, they are going to be parasitized with all the little fur balls on their backs. The word escapes me at this point. Cocoons on their backs. And just let them go. Let them go at that point, or pick them off, take them somewhere else, so that they're not continuing to eat. Once they get 30 or 40 cocoons on them, they're pretty well spent at that point, and you're starting to get this regeneration of a biocontrol agent in there. Just don't take them out and kill them. We've had years where they show up too early, and where the little wasp is not ready to go yet, and they will tear through your house. We've had years where yellow-striped armyworm shows up. In 2012, we had yellow-striped armyworm indoors, and we've never seen that pest up here before. You see them on occasion. It's in the beet armyworm family, so it shows up and was just tearing through everything because we had a mild winter, and it was just mowing everything off. Down south, they are a lot more used to that pest. But early sprays, so you get in there, scout often. When you see really young caterpillars, that's when you want to use these BT products. There's some really interesting products out there from Vestaron right now. These are they're spider and scorpion venom products. There's a Spear O and Spear T. I'm really excited to see how they work. OHP just picked up one of them, so they should finally be available. I keep hearing very mixed things about these products, but it makes sense that if you are spraying spider or scorpion venom on your insects, it ought to knock the stuffing out of them. How well they work, in fact, these products have been knocking around the marketplace for a while. I'm very curious to see how they go. So apparently, I had the flu the other day when I put all this together, so apparently I went, and all those notes I just gave you, I must have done a really good job in putting all this out here. We mentioned this. So beneficials and predators. In a tomato house, you're very limited to the general kinds of predators that you can put in here. Lacewing larvae, and you can buy lacewings, they do really well in a tomato house. They're one of the few. One of the challenges of tomatoes is you've got all of the trichomes, the little sticky things, what cause us to come out of working a tomato house and be covered in tomato tar. Insects don't like that very much either. The vast number of predators, you have to be very careful on what predator you use in a tomato house because they don't like it sticky either. You'll almost never see a ladybird beetle. Most folks call them ladybugs, but they're ladybird beetles. You'll almost never see them in a tomato house. But lacewings seem to tolerate it pretty darn well. And so lacewings are an ideal biocontrol to have in there. They eat virtually everything. They love spider mite eggs. They will eat aphids. And you can buy them they're very easy to purchase. They do a really good job. In a pepper house, ladybird beetles do a really good job as a large general purpose predator. They do a really nice job on there. This is Aureus, also known as the minute pirate bug, and it's a very small predator. You can run a banker plant system in a pepper or cucumber house because they're not hairy. So you would put in there something like black pearl peppers or purple flash pepper. Aureus will live over there, and they will eat the pollen that regularly come from these ornamental peppers, and then regularly come over and patrol your crops, and they will eat western flower thrips and aphids and other things like that. This is one of the reasons that I don't like using pyrethroids, because they will knock your Aureus back. So by running a banker plant system in there, it's very easy to have beneficials on a regular basis. You can also buy regular aphid predators, spider mite predators, western flower thrip predators. Check with a company. I know BioBest is upstairs. Carol Glenister is upstairs at IPM Labs. They can get you on a regular basis. If you're going to go the route of regularly releasing predators, you want that to be on a schedule. Do not think that you're going to come in and throw a whole bunch of predators and knock a population down before you have had substantial losses. It's a schedule you get on. You've got to figure out which predators to use when. It matters a lot. Many of them are very temperature sensitive, and so you typically would have a conversation with one of these biocontrol agent companies where you talk about the kind of pest you've had, when they've arrived, and then what crop you're growing, and they get on you on a schedule so you join these regular releases. It works really well if you stay on top of it. There's a little bit of change during the season, but one of the general purpose ones are these banker plant programs. They just run really, really smoothly. We've been doing this for a long time. This is nothing new. I'm not going to go through the historical perspective, but for many, many years, we've been doing biocontrol agents. And you got to remember, we rely on them anyhow. 97+% of insect eggs that are laid get eaten by something else. without us intervening whatsoever. We're seeing the rest of it. So when we intervene with something like Pyganic or Conserve or Entrust, we're knocking down all of our beneficials. That's often when you see a flare. And I can't tell you how many times I have been in a pepper house and where the aphids are just starting to flare. We're early in the season, the peppers are about 14 or 18 inches tall. Aphids are just flaring and they're all over the stem, and you are dying to spray, because that's what we do. We like to spray. And you're dying to spray to knock those aphids back. Scout. Often at that same time, you start looking around, especially in a pepper house, and you will see ladybird beetle larvae starting to arrive. Everything is good at that point. Within 3 days, there are no more aphids left. And now you've established a population of them that will keep coming back. If you had sprayed with a general purpose material at that point, Pyganic or one of those materials, you would have taken out your ladybird beetles, and now you're back on the spray wagon on a regular basis. So hold that wand, slow down a little bit, figure out what you're doing. But if you've got to spray, think about using something like Fulfill or Belief to knock the aphids back without knocking your predators. You will knock out the food, though, of your ladybird beetles. You're not going to get the same kind of population. I know it's hard when you're looking at all those bugs in there. This requires a lot of thought in order to do this. So myco just simply refers to fungus. There are over 700 species of fungi that are pathogenic to insects. We rely heavily on many of them. You're going to see a lot of these products coming out. Some of them do not require ingestion. A lot of them, they land on the exoskeleton of the insect and they drill their way in, and next thing the bug bursts open. And that's one of the things with the MET 52 product. It lands on there. It does not require injection. And so they get on there, they get direct penetration, and then they explode outward. And so it's very much like a contact insecticide. They don't have to eat it, where something like Dipel, which is Bacillus thuringiensis, a worm has to eat it. And then they die by septicemia. It causes these crystals to form in their gut, and so they leak from the inside out. I just love that picture. These are the things that make me happy. And so you can combine conventional insecticides with myco insecticides. It's one of the reasons I keep going back to Fulfill and Belief. I consider them, if you are not certified organic, I consider them to be really important tools to use, because they will kill aphids without shifting the rest of your population. And at this point, we are not seeing a whole lot of resistance. I'm hearing from some folks in the ornamental side, and I think Endeavor is one of those in the same class, that they're starting to see some resistance to them. At this point, I think that they're still really effective products. So I love this one. So we will call this our generic insect. Weevil, billbug, something like that. And you see it's a Penn State Extension slide. I stole this from Tom Ford, or borrowed it, or whatever. So this is our insect. And so we get a couple spores. You can see we have a couple spores that land on them. These spores germinate. They get down in, they get into the hemolymph of the insect, where they really start to take off. And now we have this explosion of stuff coming out. Then if you get ideal conditions when the humidity is high with some of these products, they're going to release spores and reinfect. We kind of battle with that. So it's not ideal to have these high humidity inside of your tunnels. This is not the ideal way to do it. So we're always battling to keep the humidity down. Do not assume you're going to get reinfection, because we fight to get the humidity down. But when you're using a myco insecticide, Bavaria bassiani, MET 52 products, any of the fungal related products, you want to spray them on at the end of the day so they are wet as long as possible. The quicker they dry, the less of an infection you're going to get. So you can boost their control a lot by these late day sprays. This is one of the few times you want something to stay wet as long as possible. And so this is the way it works. You got, this is the actual spore. You get this penetration peg. It drills down through the chitin, gets down inside into the hemolymph, and off it goes, and it starts reproducing inside. This is Metarhizium. This is MET 52 on a sugar beet maggot under ideal conditions, and this is why they call it the green muscardine fungus. When it breaks open, and you can see this is ideal when you're actually getting reinfection on it. I want to get. I've covered all this already. So this is Botanigard and many other things. This is Bavaria bassiani. It is a white kind of a fungus, and I know I've got a picture coming up. So this is one I mentioned. It infects through the cuticle. It is very general purpose. So if you have bees in there, you're doing tomatoes or peppers, and you have active bumblebees in here, you want to close the bumblebees up while you're spraying. Make sure that you are sealing them off, and you want to keep them closed up for 24 to 36 hours so that whatever you sprayed on has died at that point before you release them again. This will knock a bumblebee colony back. Other than that, it's a very good product to use. And you can see it goes to, basically it's the same kind of activity. So this is interesting here. This next one, this next point is if it catches an insect during molt, it will molt the disease right off of itself. So it will actually be able to keep on going again. So timing matters a lot. You're probably not going to get 100% kill. You probably have to come back again because you've always got some insects that are going to be molting at anything happen. And this is the toxin Bavaricin. There's a lot of them out there. I think BioSafe has it out as BioSeries at this point. We're seeing a real explosion in Bavaria bassiani again. Okay, so we'll move on from here. I think I covered all of this already. Oh, if you're using entomogenous nematodes especially in your soil for things like sore flies and the little pop-up flies, this can definitely interfere with it. Read the label on all these products. It matters how you use all of these particular things. I want to move on. So this is what it looks like when these guys kill. And
You're good.
okay. I had no idea where I was in all this. Okay, this is Isaria fumarosa. This is a Certus product, PFR 97. It's been around for a number of years. It's a really interesting product. So it's got a really, really broad label, and this is one of the few that will get Coleoptera grub. So if you can get it down in the soil, you're going to get some activity on beetles. Very few of the bioagents work well on beetles. It is the one weakness. People come up to me all the time and they are asking me, how do we biologically kill cucumber beetles? And the answer I often tell them is you take 2 bricks and accelerate them at the beetle, okay? 1 brick is never enough. You want to meet them in the middle. It's really tough killing cucumber beetles. This is one of the few products out there, but you've got to get it in the soil. You're getting the grubs before they come out when they're still in that soil stage. Once they're out of the ground, we do not have good biocontrol agents for cucumber beetles. It is one of the real weaknesses in all those products, which is why we constantly are forced to go back to things like pyrethroids or spinosids to kill them. Preferal, a very similar product, and you'll see all the exact same things. This is another of the Isaria products. I don't have a whole lot of experience with them, but one of the places we use them a lot in nurseries is for black vine weevil. As a soil drench, seems to be the bomb for black vine weevils. So this is our product, so I know a lot about it, and I've been using this product since it first came out. You can see we've got a rate on there. It's got this really broad label, aphids, mites, thrips, Lepidoptera, so it's good on small caterpillars, white flies, real short REI, very short PHI, and I mentioned this before, is this tank mix with the azadirachtin products really seemed to be the bomb this past season. We've just started a research project with Ray Cloyd, who was here yesterday out in Kansas, seeing how well it does under controlled conditions on western flower thrips. Western flower thrips have been really frustrating. They have blown through, if you look at it, almost all the common insecticides out there, we've lost them. Radiant was the last material that was commonly used for western flower thrips. My experience the last 2 years is they seem to be largely resistant to Radiant now. First time you spray, it looks like you did something. You come back again, and I hear these reports from a lot of other growers as well. You come back again, and it seems to be doing nothing at all. That's what led me down this pathway. Most of this presentation was based on the need to control western flower thrips because they are absolutely tough. And this combination of Grandivo with one of these azadirachtin products just seems to be one of the pegs to doing that, and I like the short REI, short PHI. So this is Venerate, a very similar product. This is a liquid, again, our product, short REI, short PHI, One recommendation, don't spray it on your bees. So again, end of the day, or close off your bumblebees when you're spraying them indoors. Again, a very, very broad label. This one adds diamondback moth on there. So as an aside, has nothing to do with this subject because we're in a high tunnel thing today, but if you are dealing with diamondback moth on your broccoli and cauliflower, we know this product is very effective for doing that. You've really got to get a good drench on it. High pressure, a lot of water to push it in there, and again, this tank mix makes a big difference. You'll see the broad rate per acre, 1 to 8 quarts per acre. You're just going to have to judge where you are. If you're tank mixing, use it at the lower end. If you're trying to use it as a standalone material, push that rate up as high as you can in order to get some efficacy out of it. Very good suppressant by itself. With the azadirachtin material, knocks the stuffing out of western flower thrips. I always like to recommend the soap over and over again because people don't seem to use it enough. One of the reasons I like the insecticidal soaps is we are not going to see any resistance build up to using them. If it's a small sucking insects, spider mites, broad mites, western flower thrips, aphids, white flies, and you're getting it early before the populations get high, these insecticidal soaps at 3 to 4% are just effective. Your ability to spray matters an awful lot. A question?
Can you tank mix it?
The question is, can you tank mix it? I have tank mixed it with non-oils. So I would not tank mix a soap with one of the neem products. I think you are asking for trouble at that point, but I have tank mixed it really effectively with other insecticides. Grandivo or Venerate, I have no problem doing that. And you're actually going to get some extra spread. And you brought me up to a really other interesting point. Adjuvants and surfactants. So this is one of the weaknesses oftentimes when you're doing things with biocontrol sprays is you tend not to think about adjuvants and surfactants. So I'm going to give a short plug for another company, Miller Chemical, fertilizer manufacturer. They make New Film P, which is a pinene adjuvant. It's certified organic. It's one of the few products they have that are. It will enhance the efficacy of most of your biofungicide program and way enhance the efficacy of your bioinsecticide program. The stuff's a little gnarly to work with the first time you pour it out of the jug. I mean, it is a version of pine sap. It's a highly refined pine sap, but it goes into solution really well. It will greatly enhance the efficacy of your, it's amazing. We've seen lots of studies on what adjuvant to use. This is the Miller New Film P, and I'm being specific because they have New Film and New Film 17. It is the ideal adjuvant to use for all these biocontrol agents. They make them work really well. Do not use that if you're using a soap. You've got a great spreading agent. You do not need to put it into that particular tank mix. Make sure that you get good coverage. Bottom of the leaf, top of the leaf, really blast it in. When you're doing an insecticidal soap, you want it to the point that it's really running off of the crop. But I love it because of the short REI and PHI. It makes things work real well. I've mentioned Fulfill and Belief a couple times in here. They are wonderful aphicides. If you are not certified organic, one of those should be in your arsenal for aphids. You can come in and spot spray. You can blanket spray. You will not have an impact on your beneficials because they are so specific. So a couple general things. So the shelf life on most of these biocontrol materials is 1 to 3 years. And the big differential is if it's a living material, it's probably got a 1-year shelf life. If it is an extract, if it is a bacteria that what you're spraying on is what the bacteria made, it's probably got about a 3-year lifespan to it. Don't think of these things as inventory. I get to places all the time, I get to farms all the time, and they open up their pesticide shed and they got this or that product from 2014 or 2012, and it's like they hold it in inventory because having more of them wins, okay? Use the stuff up, get fresh every year. Don't buy more than you need. We don't want to sell you more than you need because I want you to have fresh stuff. Very early in the pest cycle. I assume from the beginning of planting anything, especially in the springtime in Pennsylvania with our green peach aphids, I assume I have green peach aphids. I assume that I've got broad mites. They're just broad assumptions. And if you are controlling for green peach aphids with one of the more general purpose materials and you're controlling for mites, again, you're not going to have problems with the other insects. You can easily stay ahead of all these ones with a nice management program. I think I've covered all this stuff often enough. And this is how you get hold of me. Please come visit me in booth 102. The trade show's open for a little while longer. I will see anybody who stays for the end of the day. We'll be talking about my cucumber variety trial for the rest of it.
You have 5 minutes for questions.
So we have a few questions. Yeah, we're not going to make up questions. Yes?
So, you just want to keep on top of this. What do you spray like once a week? Like alternate?
I do. I prophylactically spray once a week. We are on schedule. And so my favorite time to spray, and part of this is because of most of the work I do is at a research farm, so typically the last thing that happens Friday is we spray. And it's just become a habit because older materials had longer PHIs and REIs. So basically, about 2 o'clock Friday, the goal is to get all these sprays on before the farm shuts down for the weekend. You can put them in wherever you want, but you want to be on a regular basis. If things are heating up, you can tighten these sprays up to 3, 4, 5 days. You don't need to, but if you are spraying once a week and you've got a good general purpose mix, and I go back to, I feel like I'm hawking product. This is really weird coming from extension to sales. I don't want to seem to be hawking product, but the Grandivo Venerate with Aza Direct tank mix has worked so well this last year. I did discover it before I went to work for this company. Prophylactically spraying it worked really well this year, except for the darn aphids. I just periodically, I had to spray 3 times for aphids this year. All of a sudden, we just got this explosion. They just seem to, they seem to be the one that can get past that program. Other questions or comments before we call this? Yes?
Use any like sticky traps or anything like that did that help you with anything?
So I have used sticky traps. The question is, do I use sticky traps? And you raise a really interesting point because I get to a lot of people's houses where they will have bought the rolls of sticky tape, and you put that over top of your plants. It does a really good job of knocking the population down. For most of the insects that are going to get down in your canopy, the one that seems to escape sticky tape real well are western flower thrips. They have no good reason to be up on the tape, and so they are down in your canopy, and they seem to do a really good job. Plus, I don't like working with the tapes. You can't just put them up and leave them up. You've got to change them out regularly. But for monitoring, though, the sticky cards are a really good monitoring, but they've got to be in your canopy. And then you need to figure out what insects look as they're splayed out like this when you're doing ID. Yes?
Doesn't that get your beneficials too?
It does. That's a very good point. You use sticky tape, and your beneficials like it just as much as everything else does. And what really hurts is when you see a bumblebee splattered on there. Okay, so yeah, sticky tape. Sticky tape is pyrethrin and spinosad. I mean, everything gets on them. Yep, but they do keep your population knocked down. And I've been in houses where rolls of sticky tape are the #1 control they use. It seems to do a pretty good job. Yes.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of this is planted in dirt, correct?
No, so the question is most of this planted in dirt? No, I plant in both dirt and in pots.
Okay. So, what expertise do you have into like rock wool and controlling pests and that?
So the question is what expertise do I have in rock wool? And I got to tell you, that is almost outside of a high tunnel. You are now moved over greenhouse, and if we're doing a greenhouse session, I would love to chat with you about that. You could use all the same things in a greenhouse, but in a high tunnel session, I don't think many of you guys are working in rock wool in here. No, so it's a good question for another session. Yes?
Is MP hard on the beneficial?
Yes, MP it's very general purpose. Yep. The MP is just it's a nice general purpose material. I like using it on my aphid hotspots. I don't always use fulfill or belief, and so when you get a hot spot like that, I'll drench a couple plants. Takes care of the hot spot without spraying the entire house. Yes.
If you use an insecticide such as Coragen in your drip water, is that going to screw all this up?
So here, the question is, if you use Coragen in your drip water, will it screw it up? It will screw up using biocontrol agents. So your released insects, especially a lot of those are alternate pollen feeders. When they're feeding on pollen, yeah, you're going to knock them back real hard. I mean, that is a systemic material. But for other things like the sprayed on biopesticides, it'll have no impact whatsoever. The problem I have with Coragen is it's not effective on western flower thrips, which is our canary in the coal mine. It's the tough one that we have. So since it's not getting what I want anyhow, I just don't use it indoors. It's good for aphids though. It does keep your aphids knocked back. Yes.
I had an organic grower growing pepper transplants for me in a greenhouse where she had been growing carrots over the winter.
Oh.
And I found out that that was a real serious host to the broadmites.
Yes.
Until we had identified them and gotten a predator in because she didn't want to use chemicals. We had a pretty serious broadmite infestation. But I was amazed. We did get the predator in, but she was in the interim using insecticidal soap, and we got really good coverage with that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because the problem I have with most people, they think soap and it's like, that's for amateurs. It is a very good tool to use like that. And folks, I can see that I'm going to cut into Caitlin's time if I keep talking. Thank you all very much. Come visit me upstairs.